we saw this glow of light, just this kind of a halo of a light, just kind of beaming out.
He wanted to tell me about a crash of some sort of craft that had occurred on his ranch.
He would wad it up in his hand. When it hit the table, it spread out just like water with no wrinkles.
And it looked like there was a hieroglyphic type writing written along the inside surface of the I-beam.
They had no earlobes. They had 2 ear canals, 2 very small orifices for the nose, a concave face.
Oh yes, it was a cover-up from the beginning.
Roswell, New Mexico, 1947, a military town and Air Force base, home to America's 509th Squadron, a tight-knit community of soldiers and civilians in the heartland of rural America. In the summer of 1947, America was gripped by a wave of sightings of flying saucers. In Roswell, there were many witnesses to a strange light in the sky.
But it was just going in a northerly motion at a pretty rapid speed, but nothing like a falling star or a meteorite. So bright like that, you couldn't look direct at it very long at a time. Then you had to look to the side of it, just like looking into a bright sun.
William Woody is 61, a pig farmer who works for the local bus company in Roswell. He remembers to this day what he saw in the evening of July 4th, 1947.
I was 13 years alive, and that was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. We got in the old truck one morning and headed north out 285 just to see if we could locate it. Every exit or path off of the highway was blocked off with the military sentries and said that that was under investigation and nobody was allowed to go either east or west off of the highway.
On the Foster Ranch, 75 miles northwest of Roswell, Mac Brazel, a farmhand, was working when he came across some strange materials scattered in the fields. His sheep refused to go near it. Unable to identify what it was, Brazel traveled 20 miles to show his nearest neighbor what he had found. Loretta Proctor is 83 and still lives on the same ranch near Corona, north of Roswell. She remembers Brazel arriving on horseback with a collection of strange material.
He showed us this piece that looked like plastic or wood of some kind, and he said that there was some metallic-looking stuff that when you crushed it, it just straightened right back out. It wouldn't stay crushed. And there was some beams or something that he said had kind of pinkish purple printing on it. Well, we told him it's probably a UFO and he should report it.
Brazel took her advice and traveled into the town of Roswell. He reported to the sheriff of Chavez County what he had found. Sheriff George Wilcox immediately notified the local air base. Roswell Army Airfield was home to America's elite bomb group, the 509th. It was surrounded by the highest levels of security and secrecy. The 509th's air intelligence officer was Major Jesse Marcel. he was assigned to investigate the material that Brazel had brought in. Marcel drove out to the Foster Ranch to collect some of the debris. That night, he brought it back to his house to show to his wife and son.
He came back real late one night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, as I recall, very excited because he woke myself, my mother up, saying they found parts of a UFO or a flying saucer at that time. And he wanted me to see it because it was such of an unusual type of finding.
Dr. Jesse Marcel Jr. is a state surgeon, pilot, and colonel in Montana's Air Force Reserve. In 1947, he was 12 years old, but he remembers the extraordinary nature of the material he saw that night in Roswell.
As I recall, the most unusual part of the debris that I saw was the I-beam fragments, or what I recall as being I-beam, because they were very light, very strong, and they had some writing along the inside surface of this. And that was the thing that really set this apart from anything I'd ever seen before.
Dan Dwyer and his colleagues in the Roswell Fire Brigade were also involved. The firemen were shown some remarkable material. Dwyer's daughter, Frankie, was in the station at the time and remembers picking it up.
When I would wad it up, it was like I had nothing in my hand. I couldn't feel it touching my skin. It was real weird. You drop it on the table and it was just like water, the way it would spread out.
Meanwhile, Major Marcel brought the material he'd recovered back to Roswell Army Airfield, where the commanding officer, Colonel Butch Blanchard, surprisingly ordered his public information officer, First Lieutenant Walter Haut, to issue a shocking statement to the press.
I was instructed by Colonel Blanchard to put out a press release which in effect stated that we had in our possession a flying saucer. In essence, it said that we have in our possession a flying disc. It was picked up on a ranch, and I can't remember if I said northwest of Roswell, brought into town by Mac Brazel, a ranch foreman, and the material was flown to higher headquarters, 8th Air Force, General Ramey.
It was an announcement that stunned the world. The London Daily Telegraph reported that although no details were given of the craft, the Air Force claimed that it was a flimsy construction, like a box kite. A small town in America had become the center of the world's attention.
There was a tremendous amount of excitement because here I am, a little country editor in a small city in New Mexico, talking to Paris and Rome and London and Tokyo, and I can't remember all of them. Spent the whole afternoon on the phone. And I know that my counterparts at the Roswell paper and probably at the radio stations did the same. But there was a lot of excitement.
America was stunned. Radio networks issued hourly bulletins. This is an actual bulletin of the time.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Russia has demanded UN action to get all foreign military personnel.
Major Marcel had flown samples of the material to Fort Worth, Texas, headquarters of the 8th Air Force. Here, the story would take a remarkable new turn. General Roger Ramey, the commanding officer, called a press conference in his office. In front of photographers, he invited Major Marcel to display the material he had brought from Roswell. The base duty weather officer was also ordered to attend to explain to the press precisely what it was that Major Marcel was holding in his hands.
The general called and said, "Get your ass over here to my office. We got something here we want you to look at." And aye, sir. And he says, if you've got a car, fine. If you haven't, get one, get the first means of transportation and get over to my office. And when I saw that, I said, "Is that your flying saucer?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, hell no, that's a Raywin target and balloon. And if it isn't," I said, "I'd eat it without salt or pepper. I know what that is." "Are you sure?" Yes, I'm sure. I know what that is.
This is what I would like to show you. In here, this is the photograph of the debris that was seen in General Ramey's office at Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, Texas. This is my father holding up what is very obviously parts of radar target with balloon debris. In here, you see balsa wood fragments. You have actually parts of the balloon envelope in of itself, and you have what looks like paperback metal foil. And to emphasize this, this is not what was seen on the floor of our kitchen that evening or that late early morning hours in 1947. This is totally different.
The implication is that Major Marcel may have been ordered to take part in a cover-up that involved switching the material from Roswell for a weather balloon. General Ramey and the Air Force now discounted their earlier press announcements that they had found a flying saucer. The story was officially dead. But back in Roswell, those who had reported the original story found that the military was behaving strangely over what they now claim was merely a weather balloon.
Out of This World will continue on TLC.